repeated that it would be better for So-yeon not to see her friend's corpse. He spoke from experience, as he still remembered Kim Joo-bin's corpse with horror. So-yeon understood and trusted Yeon-woo. The girl just turned around and wiped her tears. Her grief was great. Yeon-woo took it upon himself to make sure that his classmate Kim Min-joo would burn to death. He recalled that he remembered the girls spending a lot of time together. They were really close friends. So-yeon was crying bitterly. She was having a hysterical fit. The girl was very empathetic and had a hard time dealing with difficult moments. Yeon-woo went over to her. He heard his classmate crying hard and repeating her friend's name. He realized that he had to support his classmate in this difficult moment. Yeon-woo could not make up his mind, but he knew he had to. He wanted to put his hand on the girl's shoulder and ask her if she was okay, but he couldn't speak. Suddenly, the girl screamed before Yeon-woo could touch her back. So-yeon covered her mouth with her hands because she saw something really horrible that scared her a lot. Yeon-woo now also noticed what the girl had noticed. The same giant zombie monster was running at the teenagers. So-yeon screamed and asked Yeon-woo what they should do. The monster ran after him, as if it was chasing the teenagers. The giant somehow knew where his classmates were. Yeon-woo cursed and looked at his hand. She was covered in blood. The boy realized that the zombie monster was chasing them because he could smell the blood. The monster was getting closer and closer to them. The teenagers had to think of something fast to save themselves. Yeon-woo turned back and saw something. He looked behind them. It was a dead end. Yeon-woo told So-yeon that they could not get out because of the cul-de-sac. So-yeon apologized and said it was all her fault. Yeon-woo covered the girl with his body and said that she should have stepped back. So-yeon asked her classmate what he was going to do now. The boy replied that he was going to use the flamethrower to its fullest potential. Meanwhile, the zombie monster was about to attack the teenagers. Yeon-woo pointed the muzzle of the flamethrower at the giant, ugly exoskeleton and said they had no other choice. But the monster's behavior was very strange. Yeon-woo noticed this and could not believe what he was seeing. He was looking at this giant 3-meter exoskeleton and did not understand what was happening. Yeon-woo concluded that it was clear that the zombie monster was afraid. It was scared. But at the same time, he kept looking at the guy and growling at the same time. Yeon-woo decided that the zombie monster was afraid of the flamethrower. The guy felt that it was his mouth. He was afraid to open it again in front of Yeon-woo. The teenager realized and felt that the virus was inside his mouth. That is why the zombie monster was afraid to open it. Suddenly, the teenagers heard someone running and shouting at them to run away. It was a military man with a weapon in his hands. Kang Ji-hoon was running behind him with a Molotov cocktail. They were going to attack the zombie monster and save their friends. A large amount of fire was poured on the zombie monster. Kang Ji-hoon shouted to Yeon-woo. The guy swung his Molotov cocktail and threw it at the monster. The large exoskeleton caught fire. The soldier, Ji-han-hyun, shouted for the teenagers to run away, as they would distract the attention of the huge monster. Suddenly, the man could not believe his eyes. Yeon-woo attacked the 3-meter-tall exoskeleton with a flamethrower. The guy didn't seem to be afraid at all. Yeon-woo screamed and realized that there was no point in burning other parts of the zombie monster's body. It was necessary to burn its mouth specifically. They had to burn this virus directly, and it was in the monster's mouth. To do this, Yeon-woo had to get as close as possible to the zombie monster's face, but it was Yeon-woo who was afraid of the exoskeleton. It began to run away from him, as if it realized that the boy had found its weak point. The zombie monster started running up the stairs. Yeon-woo saw it and was surprised. The guy was about to defeat a nasty zombie monster, but it just ran away. Yeon-woo was about to run after him to kill the bastard when someone stopped him. The soldier took hold of his arm. The teenager turned around and got scared. The soldier asked where Yeon-woo got the flamethrower. The boy first screamed for the soldier to let him go, and then said that he had taken it from a place where a group of soldiers were lying dead. The soldier and Ji-han-hyun could not believe what they were hearing. Yeon-woo shouted that he had almost killed this zombie monster recently. But he added that if not now, it would be much harder to do so later. But soldier Ji-han-hyun looked at Yeon-woo and realized that the boy was too young for that. The man began to approach the teenager and told him to give him the flamethrower. Yeon-woo resisted, but Ji-han-hyun stood his ground. Nevertheless, the teenager complied and began to remove the flamethrower. Ji-han-hyun asked how many shots could be fired with this weapon, and was told that only 6 shots were possible. Yeon-woo said he had already fired 4 shots. There was almost no fuel left. Ji-han-hyun put on a fire extinguisher and said that it meant he had to finish in 2 shots. The soldier and the man were climbing up the stairs to find the monster. The soldier asked if Ji-han-hyun would be okay, as it was very dangerous. The man replied that he saw it as protecting citizens. The man explained that if she didn't get rid of this monster, the old lady downstairs would be in more trouble, and the reinforcements never came. The soldier told Ji-han-hyun not to forget that even if the soldier helps him in case of danger, he should not run for his life. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon ran in front of the men. Ji-hyun noticed this and asked where the teenager was going. The guy came back and said he would put a bait for the zombie monster. He asked that the exoskeleton might run away again if it saw the flamethrower. They told him that it was very dangerous and that he should go back down. Yeon-woo was standing behind them listening to this conversation. Suddenly, the boy said he was here. Ji-hyun turned to look at the boy. Yeon-woo seemed very confident that he knew where the zombie monster was now. Meanwhile, the zombie monster suddenly raised his head because he heard some strange sounds. Someone was running toward him and screaming. It was Kang Ji-hoon, who ran at an exoskeleton with a Molotov cocktail and yelled for the zombie monster to eat it and die. Kang Ji-hoon threw his Molotov cocktail right into the face of the zombie monster. He realized that he would not have defeated the monster with this, but it seems that the guy had a plan. Kang Ji-hoon looked at the zombie monster and asked if it was angry with him. Then, the large exoskeleton growled as if answering a teenager's question and began to open its mouth. Kang Ji-hoon began to move away from him and run back, because the exoskeleton was running very fast. The zombie monster began to open its mouth more boldly and forcefully. Kang Ji-hoon began to be afraid, but he still waited. Suddenly, a huge zombie monster opened its huge mouth to the fullest and roared. Ji-hyun stood around the corner. Kang Ji-hoon shouted at the man and gave him a signal. Then Ji-hyun jumped around the corner and pointed his flamethrower right into the zombie monster's mouth. The fire hit the exoskeleton right in the mouth. It was on fire. But there was something surprising about the military. His face showed incomprehension. He pressed the handle of the flamethrower and thought to himself that it was different from the last time. Ji-hyun made a very large amount of fire. He thought about how he already knew how this thing worked, and now, with its help, he could easily deal with the monster. Suddenly, Yeon-woo appeared next to me. The guy said that it was no use attacking the monster from the outside. Yeon-woo screamed that the virus was in his mouth. The guy said the soldier was supposed to get closer to the exoskeleton and burn the virus from the inside. For some reason, Ji-hyun trusted Yeon-woo completely. He asked him again what he was supposed to do. The teenager repeated that Ji-hyun should aim directly at the zombie monster's mouth. Then, the man began to approach the monster closer to do his job. He saw that he was right on target. The exoskeleton's mouth was open, and Ji-hyun brought the muzzle of the flamethrower closer to its mouth. The man was thinking in his head that he would finish off this damn zombie monster now, but the soldier and Kang Ji-hoon were surprised that the man came so close. They shouted for Ji-hyun to move away from him, but the man did not listen. He was fulfilling his goal. Suddenly, Ji-hyun noticed something strange in the zombie monster's behavior. Suddenly, the man's eyes grew sharply larger and his pupils shrank. It was as if he felt incredible pain. Ji-hyun's coordination has been disrupted. Kang Ji-hoon noticed that something was wrong. He shouted to the man. It turned out that the zombie monster had put its bony paw right into Ji-hyun. It cut through the man's body because it was as sharp as a sword. Suddenly, Ji-hyun realized that he was dying. Meanwhile, the door to one of the apartments was open. Inside sat. The girl suddenly heard some sounds. I could hear some voices behind the door. Someone was discussing why the door to this apartment was open, while all the others were closed. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a pen scrolling. A soldier came inside and asked if anyone was alive in the apartment. The man opened the door more forcefully and saw the teenage girl sitting sadly, hugging her legs. The soldier asked if she was okay. Suddenly, the man saw something terrible when he went further inside. He looked around the room and noticed something in the corner. The corpse of another schoolgirl was lying next to the girl. There was a pool of blood under her body. Suddenly, everyone else realized that something very bad had happened. Kang Ji-hoon was about to run to Ji-hyun and save him, but the teenager was stopped by a soldier with his hand. Suddenly, the zombie monster roared again, as if it was happy to have killed the man. The soldier then started shooting to kill the exoskeleton somehow, but the monster only growled harder and got even angrier. There was blood inside the monster's mouth, so the virus was wounded. The exoskeleton's bony paw went all the way through Ji-hyun's body and even pierced the backpack with fuel. The man saw that the zombie monster was running away and asked him where he was going. Ji-hyun brought the muzzle of his flamethrower very close to the zombie monster's mouth and commented that he still had one shot left. The man clutched the handle of the flamethrower and fired directly into the exoskeleton's mouth. There was a lot of fire. The zombie monster was screaming in pain. Ji-hyun held on. He had to finish his work. Suddenly, the man felt severe pain in his wound. He groaned in pain, but Ji-hyun did not dare to die. He gathered his strength to kill the zombie monster. The man's knees began to buckle and Ji-hyun became weaker, but the man had a goal. He had to get closer to the monster's mouth and burn all the virus inside. Ji-hyun managed to take a few steps. He was seized with a terrible rage because he had nothing to lose. The exoskeleton screamed. Ji-hyun literally shoved his hand, along with the muzzle of a flamethrower, into the monster's mouth and burned everything inside. The zombie monster was defeated. Ji-han-hyun completely burned the virus. The man was still on his feet and breathing loudly, shaking himself off. Ji-han-hyun was looking at the corpse of a huge 3-meter zombie monster and enjoying his work. Suddenly, the man fell down because he could no longer stand on his feet. He had absolutely no strength left. Others immediately ran up to Ji-han-hyun. They were shouting and asking if her husband was okay, but the man told them all to stay away from him. Ji-han-hyun looked down at the monster. He said he didn't think it was the end. The man added that the monster was still alive. Soft, growling sounds were coming from its mouth. The teenagers looked at this with their mouths wide open. They were all scared to death of what they saw. Ji-han-hyun was wounded through and through by a zombie monster bone. The soldier started to say something to the man, but could not. He was interrupted. Ji-han-hyun interrupted and said that he had only one request. The soldier asked what it was, and he was ready to do anything for his courage. The man said that he realized that things had to be different, but he added that he was going to keep fighting. Ji-han-hyun said he would stay here and set himself on fire with the monster, thanks to the oil barrels on his back. Kang Ji-hoon shouted at the man not to even think of saying anything like that. He was scared to death of what he was seeing. He shouted at Ji-han-hyun a lot because he was offended and did not want to lose his new friend. The teenager said that the man promised to help him, but the man only replied that he had asked Kang Ji-hoon to call him simply Hyun. He added that even now the teenager called him Mr. Ji-han-hyun said that he could not even help himself because he was in a very difficult situation. If you took that thing out of him, he would have died immediately. So-yeon covered her mouth with her hands. She couldn't bear to see it. The teenagers hoped to the last that Ji-han-hyun would live. Jeon-woo was no less worried. He apologized to the mister and said it was all his fault. It was all Jeon-woo's fault. But Ji-han-hyun said that the teenager did not have to apologize. The man suddenly said that he could not have lived to see today. He looked at the teenagers and said that if he hadn't met them, he would have given up a long time ago. These words touched them all. Meanwhile, the monster growled and began to move. Ji-han-hyun immediately noticed this and told others about his observations. The man stood up and said that he was allowed to do so. Ji-han-hyun looked at the soldier and addressed him. The man understood what he had to do, but he really didn't want to. The soldier took off his weapon and handed it to Ji-han-hyun. In the end, the soldier said that he was very pleased to meet him. He also asked Ji-han-hyun to end it all. The man smiled as best he could at the soldier and took up his weapon. The soldier ordered the others to leave quickly before the monster woke up. He told the teenagers that they would go with them in the direction their friends were going. Kang Ji-hoon couldn't take his eyes off his friend Ji-han-hyun. The man noticed this and looked back at the teenager. Ji-han-hyun turned his head even more because he thought he had noticed something. He was not satisfied. Kang Ji-hoon walked and cried. He could not take his eyes off his friend. The teenager could not believe that it was over. Suddenly, they all ran away and left Ji-han-hyun alone with the monster. The man looked at the monster's open mouth and asked if it had died yet. The man started to get up. He said that he had a gift for the zombie monster at the time. He took the machine gun, aimed it at the zombie monster, and asked if it was a good one, since he decided to see it off. The man was thinking in the end, it all ended this way. He apologized to his beloved Ji-sun before he died. The man recalled how they ran away from the cable car back then. He was running ahead when he suddenly noticed that his fiancée had stopped running. Ji-han-hyun turned around to see what had happened. Ji-sun crouched down, and behind her was a huge zombie monster. The man looked at his bride and stood in a stupor. His beloved also looked back at the man and breathed loudly. He recalled his last look at his fiancée, Ji-sun, before he died. He asked if she would forgive him. The man suddenly started crying. He was apologizing for not being able to help her and for not reacting in time. Before her death, his beloved shouted to her fiancé, Ji-han-hyun, to run away quickly and not wait for her, but to save himself. The man cried hard and said out loud that now they would finally see her. Ji-han-hyun couldn't wait to see her. Suddenly, there was a sound from the top floor window, followed by a big wave of explosion and lots of fire. The company quickly went downstairs in search of her classmates. They ran up to the corner and saw something that caught their attention. The company saw a girl in a pink blouse and the military in the corridor. They shouted at them to run to them. So-yeon and Yeon-woo could not believe what they were seeing with their own eyes. It was their military officer who brought the teenagers to their friends, and he found their classmate. But the girl did not look happy. She looked at her classmates and shook with fear. The soldier asked where So-yeon and Jeon-woo had been all this time. The soldier asked if the girl was their friend. Kang Ji-hoon noticed her and shouted to Hannah. The boy suddenly started running to his classmate and asked where everyone else was. Kang Ji-hoon did not know that Min-ju had burned to death. Suddenly, Kan Hannah ran away. The soldier was approaching the teenagers, and the girl just ran away from them all. The girl ran outside and climbed the stairs. Someone was running behind her and yelling at her back to stop. It was Kang Ji-hoon. He asked why the girl was running away and where she was going. They were calling for help. The boy was shouting loudly. He wanted to see Hanmi, and only Hannah knew where her classmate was. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon wanted to stop his classmate, but he couldn't, so he just pushed her. Hannah fell on the stairs. She had nowhere else to go. She had to answer all the questions. Kang Ji-hoon was indignant that the girl had started running away so abruptly. He asked her why she was doing that. Hannah started to get up and turned to her classmate. Meanwhile, the boy asked where all the other classmates were. Suddenly, the girl started screaming at Kang Ji-hoon and saying that it wasn't her fault. The boy didn't understand what had happened. Hannah started crying a lot. She was hysterical. She could not speak normally. Hannah started making excuses again and saying that it really wasn't her fault. Kang Ji-hoon began to worry because he was guessing all sorts of things. He asked Hannah what she meant. Others had already come running behind him. Kang Ji-hoon became nervous and started shouting. He demanded that Hannah explain everything. Suddenly, a soldier came up behind them and found the girl. The man said that it looked like Hannah was the only one who survived. Kang Ji-hoon could not believe it. His body shivered and his heart ached. The man continued that when he found Hannah, everyone else was already dead. Then a classmate interrupted the conversation. She said she was against it from the beginning. Hannah was crying a lot and said that they shouldn't have run away from the bus because they didn't even have batteries with them. Suddenly, the girl looked at Kang Ji-hoon. Hannah looked him straight in the eye and told him that it was all the boy's fault. She said it just like his mom. Kang Ji-hoon's heart broke into pieces. The girl stood up and held her hand. She turned to face her classmates. Hannah started blaming Kang Ji-hoon for everything again. The guy was broken. He didn't know what to say or how to react. It just couldn't be. It was a cruel joke. Hannah repeated that it was all his fault. Kang Ji-hoon was so broken that he even believed it. If it weren't for him, Hanmi would still be alive. Hanmi's corpse was lying on the floor of the apartment. There was a pool of blood under her body. The girl was not breathing. Kang Ji-hoon entered the room and saw his beloved Hanmi. The guy stood silently and looked at the girl. He was in a stupor. All I could think of was Hannah's phrase that it was all because of him. The guy did not want to live. He had lost two close people. Meanwhile, So-yeon was yelling at Hannah for what she had said to Kang Ji-hoon. The girl realized that her classmate was very wrong. Kang Ji-hoon let these phrases pass him by and asked only what had happened. Kang Hana began to cry. The headman asked only about Lee Hong-mi. The guy asked again what happened to Lee Hong-mi. Suddenly, the memories of that horrific situation came flooding back to Hannah. Lee Hong-mi was running away from a huge exoskeleton, but it caught up with her and sliced through her body with its bones. Hannah simply said that she was attacked by a monster, without giving any details. Kang Ji-hoon fell to his knees. He was powerless and could not stand on his feet. He lowered his head and sat next to his beloved Lee Hong-mi. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon began to shake. His body could not take it anymore, and then he started crying softly. He looked at the corpse of his sweet, beautiful Hanmi. She was supposed to be his. How much the guy hadn't had time to tell her. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon began to cry hard. His heart was breaking into pieces. He felt so much pain inside. The guy was constantly apologizing to the girl. If only she knew how sorry he was for everything he did to her, and for not saving her. But Kang Ji-hoon could not forgive himself. Meanwhile, the events moved to a small shop. The teenagers sat inside with Hwang. Hannah was holding her legs with her hands and Yeon-woo was talking to a man. So-yeon just sat there. Hwang asked if all the friends they were looking for were like that. The man spoke carefully, not mentioning the word death. Then he asked if Hyun was like that too and looked at Yeon-woo. The guy looked down and was silent. And without words, everything was clear. Suddenly, So-yeon cried out loudly, wiping the tears from her eyes. Hwang exhaled loudly and sadly. He was a good man and was experiencing this tragedy together with the teenagers. Suddenly, the man remembered his last conversation with Hyun. He asked Hwang to take care of these children. The man added that Hyun followed his fiancée and wished his friend to rest in peace. Hwang told So-yeon that she shouldn't have been so upset. The girl was just having a tantrum. The man tried to calm them down and said that everyone who was left had to try to survive as best they could. Jeon-woo looked up. He was interested in the man's words. Kang Hana also looked at Hwang and listened intently. The man continued that he had heard that the teenagers had gotten separated when they arrived at the evacuation site. Jeon-woo suddenly decided to ask Hannah what had happened. The boy felt that something was wrong. He asked his classmate why she had run away earlier. The girl was silent. Suddenly, horrific memories of that situation began to surface in her mind. Hannah was the last to run. Before her were Hanmi and Minju. The girls were running away from the bus. Hannah suddenly stopped and got scared. She didn't think it was a good idea to run away from the bus. On the way out, she heard the bus driver yelling at the girls and calling them all idiots. The man said that he had saved them all, and now they were attacking him. His last words were that they would all regret it later. Hannah came back to reality and said that she couldn't. So-yeon was looking at her. The girl hugged her legs, lowered her head, and said that she could not trust anyone. She said that after what she had been through, she could not trust even So-yeon. Hannah remembered again how they ran away with the girls. In front of them was a street that was completely covered with white mucus and frog egg virus, like a spider's web. Minju turned to them and screamed. Behind them, they heard the monster growling. Minju said they should run faster. Behind them was a big zombie monster. The girls ran into a room. They all laughed loudly because it seemed that the problem was over, and they were now in relative safety. Hanmi and Hannah looked at the floor and breathed loudly. Minju asked her friends if everyone was okay and if anyone was hurt. The girl looked out the window and saw something. Then Hannah suggested finding something to set on fire. Minju said it was a good idea and offered to go first. Hannah, meanwhile, commented on her story and said that they thought they could handle it well. But a zombie monster attacked them. Minju was breathing loudly. She was scared. The other girls looked on from the sidelines. They were also very scared. A huge zombie monster was burning near Minju. The girls suddenly screamed to their friend. They realized that something had happened to the girl. But Minju sat by the fire and did not turn to them. Suddenly, Lee Hong-mi started talking to her friend to figure out what had just happened. The girls heard Minju ask them why. The teenagers were very afraid of what they were about to see. But Minju told them that everything was fine, as if there was no reason to worry. The girl looked at her hands and said that she had not touched the zombie monster. She put her arms around herself and said that she was fine. Minju turned to her friends to look at them. She repeated that everything was fine. The girls were very scared. They were holding their heads and cold sweat was pouring down their faces. Hannah suddenly added that at the time they really thought Minju was not infected, but they were all wrong. So-yeon looked at the girl. She felt sorry for her friends, especially since they were the ones who burned Minya alive. Hannah said that Minju seemed to be pretending to be normal, but she was really deceiving them all. The girl told So-yeon that she had also deceived them, and Hannah asked how she could trust her after that. Jeon-woo overheard this conversation. So-young went to Hannah and hugged her friend, saying that they really didn't know and asked her to believe them all. Yeon-woo suddenly remembered the fight with Park Min when he said that his classmates were infected. The guy realized that it was an incubation period, so Minju didn't know she was infected at first. Yeon-woo realized that anyone would initially categorically deny being infected, like Park Min. That is why the incubation period cannot be avoided. Suddenly the guy told Hannah that it was the incubation period in Minju. The girl looked at her classmate, but did not understand anything. Yeon-woo added that there were many others where they were staying. They did not feel that they were infected. That is why they believed her and searched for her. The guy added that if the girl really survived those mutant monsters. Jeon-woo was silent for a second, pausing to catch Hannah's attention, and she really listened carefully to the guy's words. He then said that Kang Hannah should have thanked Kang Ji-hoon for saving her. Yeon-woo explained that if he hadn't brought those soldiers to them and made a scene, the monster would never have let the girl live. Hannah's eyes suddenly grew bigger, and cold sweat ran down her face. She had never thought about it before. She suddenly remembered Lee Hong-mi crying and telling her friends that Kang Ji-hoon would come and save them. She repeated his name like a mantra. Jeon-woo did not look at his classmates. He was still inside himself, thinking about what had happened over the past few days. He had an image of a huge exoskeleton that had killed so many lives. Yeon-woo suddenly wondered if there were any other monsters like that out there. After all, that was the monster he saw and almost defeated. He just ran away when he was sure that Jeon-woo could have killed him. Suddenly, the boy wondered if the monster could read minds. At that time, Jeon-woo even felt his fear. It scared him. He was much closer to the virus than he would have liked. Jeon-woo suddenly thought that maybe he could fight other monsters in the same way. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted. Hannah said that they had promised to meet here, but Jeon-woo didn't understand, so he asked the girl what she meant. Hannah said once again that she and her classmates promised to come back here again, but the boy still did not understand anything. Jeon-woo asked Hannah what she was talking about. Hannah asked if they really didn't know about anything. The girl said that since the signal was back to normal, they were sharing information. And then they said the safest place was Namsan Tower. Jeon-woo was shocked by what he heard. He did not understand who the people were who said this to the girls. The girl began to explain that there were many restaurants in front of Namsan Tower, so there was plenty of food and a place to isolate oneself. Hannah added that if her classmates had not found her, she would have gone there too. She also said that Minji said she knew a safe way. So-yeon pulled out her phone and started scrolling through the class chat. She said there was nothing about it. But suddenly, Hannah said it wasn't in the class chat. So-yeon was surprised. She didn't know about any other chats. Hannah explained that there was a different time. It was created by Park Min. Suddenly, the girl said something that surprised Seo-young. Hannah said that Park Min had deliberately left them out. Meanwhile, the military entered the building with my grandmother. They evacuated her as promised. The old woman suddenly asked if she could ask them for such a thing. She said that she would now be in their debt. Suddenly, the soldier examined everyone and said that one of them was missing. The soldier asked where the guy with the duck briefcase was. The man was referring to Kang Ji-hoon and added that he should be brought here immediately. Another soldier went to look for the teenager. He was a little nervous. The remaining soldier began to explain that he realized that the current conditions were not very good. Jeon-woo looked at the man. The soldier added that soon they would all go to the evacuation site. The soldier told all those present to wait a little while so that they could check everything. Suddenly, the man was interrupted. Someone said he didn't want to go. It turned out to be Jeon-woo. He said that he did not want to go to the evacuation site. He just didn't want to go. The soldier was surprised by the teenager's statement and asked what Jeon-woo meant. Did he really want to stay in such a dangerous place? To which Jeon-woo calmly replied that he would like to stay here. The soldier said it was his job to look after him, so he could not leave Yeonwoo here, and added that they would all go with him. Suddenly, So-yeon interrupted the conversation. She said that their classmates were waiting for them all here. Jeon-woo did not expect such a statement from So-yeon. He was sure that the girl would want to go to a safe place. The girl said that they had met near the Namsan Tower. She added that they had to go there right now. So-yeon was nervous. Jeon-woo realized that the girl was lying and supported her. She said that was the case, so they couldn't go to the military. The soldier turned and looked out the window. He asked if they were really talking about the Namsan Tower. The soldier said it was dangerous, to which So-yeon replied that they were waiting for them right in front of her and they would be back soon. The soldier said he could not allow it, and then he added that he would only allow it if they did it quickly and came right back. The soldier turned to his partner and told him to go with them and report everything to the military. The man looked at So-yeon then. The girl looked back at him, a little nervous. The soldier was embarrassed. The man seemed to like So-yeon. He was ordered to do everything quickly, and if it was not safe there, to call the army. Jeon-woo was silent, and it was clear that something was wrong with the guy. So-yeon suddenly called out to him and asked if he was okay. Jeon-woo turned toward the sound. The girl said that she was referring to the hand of her classmate that the monster had attacked. So-yeon wanted to touch Jeon-woo's hand and asked if he was in a lot of pain. It was a big wound. But the soldier who liked So-yeon did not let that happen. He yelled at them to stop talking and get ready. Jeon-woo told So-yeon to leave. The guy added that it was where the others were, but he did not finish. Jeon-woo spoke incomprehensibly in fragments. He said he was more than sure he could do it. He said he thought he could have avoided the virus and made it to Namsan Tower. So-yeon was shocked by what she heard. The soldier was getting irritated. He yelled at the teenagers for taking so long. The man wanted to say something else, but he didn't have time. His attention turned to something more interesting. When he turned his head, he saw Kang Ji-hoon entering the room with the military. His classmates were surprised and called out to him. They were worried about the boy because he hadn't been seen for a long time. Meanwhile, the guy was talking to the soldiers about something of his own, with his head down. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon saw his classmates and raised his head to look at them. He said he was going to kill all those monsters. Meanwhile, a group of teenagers and a soldier were already running toward Namsan Tower. The soldier was outraged, because earlier the teenagers had said that they had to go to the entrance to the tower, and now they said we should go straight into the tower. The man asked if they wanted him dead. So-yeon apologized to her husband because she was the one who deceived him. The girl said they were worried about their classmates and asked if they could at least look inside. The soldier was angry, but if So-yeon asked him to, he could have agreed. The soldier asked indignantly why they couldn't have done it earlier. Jeon-woo ran after everyone. He was feeling a little sick. Suddenly, he began to remember something. He recalled So-yeon asking if his arm, which had been attacked by a monster, was okay. He clearly remembered that there was a wound there. It was bleeding, and there might have been a scar. But now there was nothing on my arm. Jeonwoo was surprised by this. He was 100% sure that his wound had healed too quickly. Suddenly, the soldier stopped and shouted. All the others stopped as well. They were standing in front of the stairs. Black smoke was visible at the top, as if something was burning. The company quickly began to rise to see what had happened at the top. The man commented that everything had gone up in smoke. There was a parking lot with cars in front of them that was completely on fire. He said that they wanted to kill these monsters at any cost, so they just burned everything. Jeon-woo was standing behind the soldier. Suddenly, he felt very sick. Everything seemed to turn green in his eyes. He realized that he could feel all the monsters more clearly now. Much better than before. It was as if he had a thermal imager in his eyes. Jeon-woo said they all had to leave immediately to the military, but the soldier did not understand anything and wanted to go forward. But Jeon-woo blocked his way with his hand and said that there were monsters there. Kang Ji-hoon pushed Jeon-woo as if he wanted to get ahead. Suddenly, one of the monsters actually came out from behind the car and growled at the company. The guy jumped up and swung the Molotov cocktail he was holding. Kang Ji-hoon threw it at the monster and hit the target. Jeon-woo shouted to his classmate. He was acting rashly. The soldier asked if the teenager was crazy. Yeon-woo ran after him because Kang Ji-hoon was not going to stop. The guy was holding some kind of twigs and put them in front of the fire so that they would catch fire. After that, Kang Ji-hoon ran further and screamed. Yeon-woo saw the aggression and hatred with which Kang Ji-hoon fought the monsters. He was shouting at them and throwing fire. The guy acted as if he was not afraid at all. Kang Ji-hoon shouted that they should all die. His aggression was boiling over. Now, the entire parking lot was on fire, along with all the monsters that were on it. When Kang Ji-hoon realized that he was done with it, he began to breathe loudly, shaking himself off. Meanwhile, the others had already come running to him. The company looked at his back and came to their senses after the show he put on for them. The soldier began to condemn Kang Ji-hoon's actions. He asked if he had a problem with aggression. Suddenly, the boy just walked away from them in the other direction. The soldier shouted at his back and asked where he was going and called the teenager a fool. The soldier yelled at Kang Ji-hoon not to go there alone. He asked that the teenager was not even going to return. Yeon-woo looked at the boy and thought for a long time. He wanted to understand why Kang Ji-hoon was acting like this. The soldier said that every team would have someone like this guy, and then he added that everyone should follow him. The soldier added that he would not worry if someone died with him if they behaved like him. Meanwhile, Kana was on the phone. The girl corresponded in the same class group. She wrote that she would soon be with them. Someone asked her who else was with her, and she listed all the names of her classmates. Meanwhile, the tower was close enough. Kang Ji-hoon walked alone and was in his own thoughts. He wanted to be alone. The same memories came to mind, one after another. He remembered Lee Hong-mi's body lying there, not breathing. Her beautiful face in the pool of blood. Kang Ji-hoon cursed out loud. These memories hurt him deeply. Suddenly, Jeon-woo appeared next to the teenager. He asked what his classmate had said about wanting to kill all the infected. He looked at the floor and asked if he meant it then. Kang Ji-hoon remained silent and only looked at Yeon-woo from the corner of his eye. Then, the guy repeated his question again. He wanted to get an answer. Yeon-woo said he understood how Kang Ji-hoon felt, and then asked if it would be better to avoid danger, to which his classmate did answer him. He said it was nonsense. Kang Ji-hoon asked if Yeon-woo really thought they could just avoid it all. The guy looked directly at Yeonva and said that only by killing each monster did they avoid danger. Yeon-woo also looked at Kang Ji-hoon in return. His classmate asked him when he would stop running away from it, but Yeon-woo reacted a little strangely. The guy went ahead and said that Kang Ji-hoon continued in the same spirit. And then he stopped a little and added that if he was going to go alone and get infected, he had to make sure he didn't hurt anyone. Kang Ji-hoon put his head down and kept walking. Then he looked up and looked at Yeonwa. The guy commented out loud that these idiots were getting on his nerves. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon noticed something. He turned to see what it was. He saw a sign that led to the stairs downstairs. It read, "Only you can prevent forest fires." Meanwhile, the soldier talked to So-yeon. He seemed to really like the girl. They were climbing the stairs and talking about how the teenagers were from Cheonan, specifically from Shindong. The man said he did not know the place. He asked if it was a town near the terminal. So-yeon happily replied that it was true. The man said that he had friends there and often went to the sauna. Suddenly, the soldier turned to the girls and said that they were very good. So-yeon was surprised by this. It was strange for her to hear this from an adult. The man began to make excuses and explained that they were good for going to a dangerous place to meet their friends. So-yeon simply thanked him, but she felt that the soldier was flirting with her, and it made her uncomfortable. The soldier wanted to add something else, but suddenly he stopped talking before he could finish. He abruptly took the weapon in his hands and aimed it somewhere to the side. Yeon-woo watched him do this. He didn't feel any monsters around. The man was watching the bushes. He thought he heard a rustling in the bushes. Suddenly, the soldier heard several more rustling noises. He was ready to shoot. Suddenly, a little squirrel came out from behind the bushes. Its cheeks were full. The man cursed because he was frightened by an ordinary little innocent squirrel. The soldier lowered his weapon and commented that there was no threat. The soldier looked at the teenagers and added that they could not worry and that everything was fine. Suddenly, he didn't finish. He saw So-yeon and Jeonwa. The girl automatically hid behind the boy when she felt threatened, and Jeon-woo in turn covered her. They did it very naturally. The soldier was upset by what he noticed. He probably thought that the teenagers were a couple, or definitely had feelings for each other. Jeon-woo told So-yeon that he was not afraid. The girl smiled and told him not to lie. They were very nice. The soldier did not want to see it and told everyone to hurry up. Jeon-woo told his classmates to leave. The soldier walked ahead and listened to their conversation. So-yeon said she couldn't believe they were scared of a squirrel and added that they were weak. Yeon-woo repeated that he was not scared at all. The soldier was thinking about this guy. He had leaked the soldier. The man recalled how he met him for the first time and how Yeon-woo cried like a girl. The soldier thought about it and did not understand what So-yeon saw in him. He suddenly shouted to everyone to come faster. He didn't want to listen to their sweet talk. So-yeon suddenly stopped and looked to the side. Something caught her eye. Jeon-woo felt that the girl had stopped for some reason and decided to see why. It turned out that So-yeon wanted to take a photo. She thought the area was very beautiful. Yeon-woo asked what the girl was doing and added that the soldier told her to go faster. So-yeon couldn't take her eyes off him and began to explain. She said she just had memories of this place. The girl added that she and her friends took a photo together at this spot and said that if nothing had happened, she would have done it. Suddenly, Jeon-woo also remembered that moment and the photo. They were standing there and Lee Hong-mi was taking pictures of them all. Everyone was so happy then. So-yeon said it was very funny. She explained that back then, teenagers did everything to escape from this place, and now they have returned to it again. So-yeon added that she hoped Hannah was telling the truth, and that the tower was still safe. The girl explained that she did not want to see anyone die anymore. Jeon-woo said that everything would be fine. After all, if the others stayed there, it was a really safe place. So-yeon understood this, but something still bothered her inside. She decided to tell Yeon-woo about it. So-yeon said that she was worried that if they had rested, they would not be able to bear it all. She continued that as soon as they felt safe again and could rest, something would happen again. Suddenly, tears began to flow from So-yeon's eyes. Her voice trembled and she started to talk about her friends, but she didn't have time. Jeon-woo interrupted her and said they would think about it when they got there. So-yeon's eyes were filled with tears. He told her to just wait for it to happen. Suddenly, they heard someone cursing. It was not good. Jeon-woo and So-yeon started running because they were lagging behind the others. The guy asked Hannah what had happened and what was ahead. Suddenly, Jeon-woo felt a strong, piercing pain in his arm. Then he looked up and saw something that caused him pain. There was a big pile of monsters in front of them. They were all blocking the road to Namsan Tower. The zombie monsters sensed their new victims. Some of them woke up and growled. The soldier asked why there were so many monsters there. It was very strange. Kang Ji-hoon cursed. Yeon-woo heard this and turned to look at his classmate. The boy asked Yeon-woo if he had imagined it all that way, that there would be no monsters. Kang Ji-hoon told everyone to step aside. He was already holding a bottle of Molotov cocktail in his hands. The guy was serious. After a while, everything was on fire and the screams of monsters burning alive could be heard. After that, the company calmly climbed up the ladder. The Namsan Tower was much more visible, and the company was almost there. The soldier was sincerely surprised by this fact. He added that it was quite fast. The soldier said that they had a good look around, but the teenagers could already hear the sounds of monsters coming to them. The sounds of growling came from some room. There was a zombie monster inside with dark hair. It looked like a girl. Suddenly, Yeon-woo felt something. It looked like there were some zombie monsters nearby. So-yeon noticed that her classmate was wary. The girl asked him what happened. The teenager looked at the stairs they were climbing, but they weren't wearing anything, so he said that everything was fine. Then So-yeon told him to keep up. Jeon-woo said he was leaving, but in his mind he was thinking about what he had just experienced. He felt that something was wrong, but he put it down to his imagination. Meanwhile, another soldier was with Hwang, a homeless man. The man asked what the soldier was looking at. The soldier replied that he was looking at the condition of the cells. He explained that if you look closely, you can roughly understand when and how much they multiplied. He gave an example that if cells spent a lot of time without finding a host, their color and movements became cloudy. The soldier commented that the cages had probably been without an owner for about 2 days. Hwang then asked if the place was safe back then. The military officer said this was true when compared to places where the virus was still active. He added that in such places there were no infected cats or rats left at all. The soldier went on to explain that when the host's body was small, the cells tried to merge again to hunt for new food. The man added that this food was usually humans. The virus was constantly looking for the energy it needed to mutate. But if they did not find food for a long time, they began to merge with each other. He clarified that back then the stronger devoured the weak. It was the law of the jungle. The military man said that the virus had developed a remarkable instinct for self-survival. Suddenly, the soldier turned to Hwang and began to say something. He asked the man where the teenagers were and why they had been gone for so long. It turned out that the company still hadn't contacted them. A lot of monsters stuck to the window of the room. They were screaming and growling. Kang Ji-hoon was on the alert and looking around. The soldier was angry and asked where their friends were. The man looked around but saw no one. It was not clear that anyone was in the room at all. Hannah was worried and said they were supposed to be in the Namsan Tower. The soldier became even more irritated and shouted that they were in the Namsan Tower. The man said it was a joke, but he didn't have time to finish. He suddenly fell silent because he saw something very strange. A lot of zombie monsters came around the corner. They growled at the company and wanted food. The soldier shouted that these creatures were here too and told the company to follow him. The soldier told Kang Hannah to contact her classmates right away. but Hannah said she hadn't been able to contact them all this time. Suddenly, the man stopped and stopped running. He looked at the teenagers and asked if it was a joke. They all looked at him accusingly. The man recalled that they told him that their classmates were already waiting for them here. He added that if they could not contact them, the company had to go back. Yeon-woo panicked. He was outraged and said they hadn't checked the other floors yet. The soldier repeated that Hannah could not contact them. He added that the teenagers should be thankful that they came here in the first place. Yeon-woo shouted and asked if he could look on the lower floors. He promised that he would not endanger them. But the military man was silent. He was already angry with this guy, and here he was making a hero out of himself. He addressed him as the guy in the cap. The soldier told the boy to follow him and ordered the others to wait for them upstairs. They went downstairs and saw the game plaza. Yeon-woo commented that they seemed to be lucky because there were no infected people here. Yeon-woo wanted to go into the room and ask the soldier to wait until he saw what was inside. The guy told the soldier to wait for him there. Suddenly, the soldier swore. The man asked the boy if he wanted to die. Meanwhile, other classmates were waiting on the stairs and looking at Hannah's phone. So-yeon asked her classmate if she still hadn't contacted them, and then she asked who the girl had corresponded with before. Hannah was worried about something and was indignant about why So-yeon was asking. Kang Ji-hoon was listening to this conversation. So-yeon said she would try to call them. Something must have happened. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon spoke to the girls and told them to stay here. So-yeon asked where her classmate was going. The boy replied that he wanted to look around the top floor again. The girl told him that they had been ordered to stay put. Ji-hoon asked, a little irritated, if he looked like a soldier. He added that the girls could keep listening to the soldier as if it were something to be ashamed of. The guy finally added that he would be back soon. Hannah looked at her classmate's back, sending him off with a glance. Her expression changed. Kang Ji-hoon was annoying her for some reason, as if he was spoiling some plans. Meanwhile, the boy went upstairs and looked around the corner to inspect the room for monsters. Everything looked very clean. It was impossible that a monster had not set foot here. Kang Ji-hoon walked cautiously and looked around suspiciously, but the floor was still perfectly clean. It was as if a monster's foot had never set foot here. The guy started thinking out loud. He was looking for some cafes because he was almost out of Molotov cocktails. Kang Ji-hoon thought that unfortunately, a few bottles would not stop monsters. He realized that he needed a bigger fire. Suddenly, he remembered the sign on the way to the tower about forest fires. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon returned. Something caught his attention. The guy saw a machine gun. It was working and glowing. Kang Ji-hoon stopped and thought about what he should do. Meanwhile, So-yeon and Hannah were sitting on the stairs. The girl said that the boys had been gone for a long time and added that they shouldn't have gotten separated. And then So-yeon thought that maybe they could find the others that way. Meanwhile, Hannah sat and looked down. So-yeon said she hoped the boys would return with their classmates. Hannah was suspiciously silent, as if she was hiding something. Suddenly, the girl said that this would never happen. So-yeon didn't understand and asked her friend what she meant by owl. Hannah said they would never find their classmates because they would not be here. So-yeon was surprised. She was shocked and could not believe what she heard. The girl asked if Hannah knew where their classmates were. So-yeon immediately started running downstairs to the boys and said that she was going to call them all. She was indignant that Hannah hadn't said anything right away. But a classmate stopped So-yeon. Hannah began to speak incomprehensibly and unintelligibly. So-yeon did not understand anything and asked the girl to explain everything properly. Hannah then said that they asked not to bring others. The girl was looking at the floor. She added that they said they would not accept Lee Yeon-woo and Kang Ji-hoon or even this soldier. Hannah said they were the only ones who could come to them. The girl suggested that So-yeon and I run away together right now. Meanwhile, Yeon-woo was shocked by the military man's question. He asked why the soldier asked him this so unexpectedly. It was very strange, but the soldier started laughing at the boy. He asked if Yeon-woo hadn't realized anything yet. He said that the boy probably thought that after the soldier's charity, he was a simple man. Yeon-woo was shocked by what he heard. The soldier began to say that they were all trying to trick him, but the soldier said he did not believe everything they told him. The soldier said that Yeon-woo said he was going to look for friends, but it was a complete lie. The teenager was even more shocked. The soldier asked if Yeon-woo wanted to brainwash him. The soldier added that the boy behaved like this because he was afraid of a shitty life in the shelter, so he used the search for his friends to escape. Yeon-woo was very scared. He did not understand what was happening. If the guy had wanted to run away, he would have done so long ago back at the convenience store. Suddenly, the soldier pointed the muzzle of his weapon at the boy and asked him again if he wanted to die. Yeon-woo's eyes grew very wide and his heart began to beat faster. He did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, the teenager fell to the ground and screamed. He started telling the soldier to stop. Yeon-woo shouted and begged the man to believe him. Suddenly, a smile appeared on the soldier's face. Yeon-woo was breathing loudly and shaking his head. He heard the man asking him if he was a fool. The soldier took away the muzzle of the gun and said he was joking. Then he told Yeon-woo not to act like a coward, because he was a man. He added that if he wanted to shoot Yeonva, he would have done it long ago. The guy was shocked by everything that happened. The soldier asked if Yeon-woo remembered how he had saved him the first time they met. The guy looked at the man and breathed loudly. What was the point of this joke at all? The soldier turned to him and told him to treat Yeon-woo well, as if he was hinting at something specific. The man walked away laughing. Yeon-woo thought that after such jokes, he should not have expected a good attitude. The guy was sitting on the floor and breathing loudly. He thought to himself that it wasn't funny at all, and Yeon-woo didn't remember the man saving him at all. Suddenly, Yeon-woo felt something strange. It seemed that there were monsters nearby. The guy shouted to the soldier to be careful. The man stopped and looked at Yeonva. Suddenly, in front of them at the end of the room, stood a huge zombie monster with women's hair. It looked like an exoskeleton. The soldier saw it and was terrified. Meanwhile, Hannah took hold of So-yeon's hand and said that they had to get out of here, and quickly. The girl was scared and screamed for her and So-yeon to leave immediately. Cold sweat was pouring down her face. So-yeon said that Hannah waited for a while. She asked what they would do with the others. The girl said they had to leave with them all. Suddenly, the girls heard some screaming. They both turned around and realized that the sound was coming from downstairs. The sounds came from where Yeon-woo and the soldier were. Suddenly, So-yeon heard Hannah almost cry. She said the girl was the same way. My classmate started saying incomprehensible things again. It was as if she was trying to say something, but she couldn't. Suddenly, Hannah gave away that So-yeon was just like the others because she had betrayed her. Kana shouted at her classmate to leave, and then the girl ran and pushed So-yeon aside. The girl did not expect this and just fell to the ground. Meanwhile, the soldier and Yeon-woo were running away from the huge monster. They did not realize what had just happened. Suddenly, he looked up and saw something that surprised him. So-yeon was sitting downstairs on the stairs. The boy shouted to her. He approached the girl and began to help her up. Yeon-woo asked what had happened. The guy shouted for the girl to get up because they had to run. Suddenly, behind them, the company saw a huge zombie spider monster. Suddenly, So-yeon realized something. Her eyes widened. She could not believe what she was seeing. So-yeon recognized that it was their classmate Gale who was the first to be infected. Suddenly, a zombie monster threw its head into the company. Meanwhile, Hannah was running and coming down the stairs. The girl was breathing loudly. She could barely run. She ran to some room where her classmates were probably hiding. Hannah ran to the door of the restaurant. The girl began to move the doors of the restaurant and shouted for them to open them. Then the door opened a little, and the girl saw her classmates. Two girls looked at her through the crack. It was not clear from their faces whether they were happy to see her or not. Hannah went inside the restaurant. It was completely clean, as if the virus had never been there at all. The girl shook her head loudly. The girls looked at her very strangely, as if with some kind of disgust. Hannah was breathing loudly and intermittently, said that she thought she was going to die. The girl suddenly raised her head and started crying. She thanked the girls and looked at them. My classmates did not understand and were surprised. Suddenly, they asked why Hannah was alone. She didn't understand, so she asked them what they meant. One of her classmates asked that Hannah had promised to come with So-yeon. She asked where the girl was. Suddenly, the girl's face changed dramatically. Her eyes narrowed and became dissatisfied. Suddenly, she heard someone's voice behind her. He was surprised that the girl had really come. They were two of her other classmates, a boy and a girl. The girl with the big lips was surprised to see her. Hannah said So-yeon's name and looked at her classmates. Meanwhile, the company was doing poorly. Gale growled at them and tried to eat them. The soldier began to defend the teenagers and fired his assault rifle at the zombie monster. Meanwhile, Yeon-woo was holding So-yeon and trying to put her in his arms. The teenagers screamed together and ran away from their friend's monster. The soldier was still shooting at Gale to save himself. The zombie monster started to fall. The shooting helped, and the soldier shouted for them all to run until Gale came too. But they had plenty of time. The zombie monster realized that the victims were running away, so it growled and began to rise. The man turned to the side and saw something. He shouted to the teenagers that he had given them an order to run away. He asked them what they were doing. Yeon-woo and So-yeon were climbing up. The boy shouted for the soldier to follow them. So-yeon looked back to see if they were falling behind Gale. The zombie monster had managed to come to its senses and was running after them. It had 6 legs, like a spider. The teenagers had never seen such a monster before. Gale growled loudly at them. Suddenly, Yeon-woo felt sick again. Everything was swimming before his eyes. He began to think that they would all die if they continued like this. They were running away from a zombie monster. But Yeon-woo realized that they couldn't go on like this any longer, and sooner or later they would be eaten. He had to think of something. Suddenly, Yeon-woo remembered Lee Tae-in's words. He went downstairs and finally whispered some advice into the boy's ear. Lee Tae-in told him then that the next time Yeon-woo met a monster, he was not to run but to stand still. And then, after that, Yeon-woo would have realized a lot. The guy stopped then. He realized that he should have tried this advice. It was now or never. Then, the guy just stopped and stopped running or running away. The zombie monster Gale was shocked by the boy's actions. Yeon-woo stood still even though he was scared to death of this monster. He was uncertain, but he seemed to have imagined something. He thought about the fact that when he encountered the eco-skeleton, he didn't touch it then. So-yeon noticed that Yeon-woo had stopped. It scared her. She didn't understand what was happening. The guy told her that if something happened, she had to run. Mentally, Yeon-woo began to talk to the zombie monster Gale. He put his sore arm in front of her and said that the monster had helped him. Gale stopped and did not attack them. So-yeon hid with Yeon-woo and the boy continued to hold his hand. The girl shouted to her classmate and asked what he was doing. So-yeon thought Yeon-woo had gone crazy. The boy continued to communicate with the monster in his mind. He said that Gale was looking at him. He told her that he was infected, just like her. He asked if the zombie monster could feel it in him. Then he wanted to ask her something. Yeon-woo was scared to death. Cold sweat was pouring down from him. Yeon-woo took all his courage and asked the zombie monster Gale to leave. Her mouth was very close to Yeon-woo's hand. Perhaps she wanted to bite him. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon ran up to them. He shouted at his classmates to move away. Yeon-woo turned and saw his classmate running to save them. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. Kang Ji-hoon lit a Molotov cocktail and smashed it on Gale. Yeon-woo saw the zombie monster start to burn. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon asked where the others were, and Yeon-woo still couldn't come to his senses. But the boy asked his classmates again why it was just the two of them. The teenagers started running and climbing the stairs to Kang Ji-hoon. The headman kept up with them and yelled again to tell them where everyone else was. So-yeon said she didn't know and suggested they get out of here first. Meanwhile, the monster Gale was melting and burning from the fire. The teenagers ran upstairs, where there was no hint of any apocalypse. Yeon-woo said he thought they were going to die. Then he began to tell me what happened. He said that the monster from the 4th floor appeared out of nowhere, and the soldier ran to the lower floor. Suddenly, Yeon-woo started talking about Hannah. He asked So-yeon if she hadn't been with her. The girl was silent. She was worried and did not know how to tell them. So-yeon couldn't think of anything better than to lie and say that Hannah ran away because of shock. Yeon-woo asked if it was true because it sounded very strange. So-yeon then said that maybe it would be better for them to just leave the room. Yeon-woo was surprised by his friend's answer. So-yeon explained that they didn't even know where their classmates were, and they couldn't even contact them. Yeon-woo told them what to do with Hannah. The first thing they had to do was find her. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon said that he thought he knew where Kang Hana was. Yeon-woo and Seo-young were shocked by this. The boy said he had figured out where their classmates could be hiding. He added that Hannah was lying to them. So-young and Yeon-woo were shocked, especially the boy. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon said that the girl had been lying to them from the beginning. His face looked very angry. Meanwhile, the restaurant where the classmates were hiding was calm. The three girls gathered together and discussed what to do next. They talked about the sounds of gunfire and how scared they were. One of the girls said she hoped that others would come to them and help. She asked if there was anything new in the group chat. Hannah, meanwhile, sat alone far from the rest of her classmates. Out of the corner of her eye, she heard if there was any news from Park Min. Another classmate said that she had calmed down and that they just had to stick together. Suddenly, someone came up to Hannah and said that there was a network here. The girl was scared. It was her classmate with glasses and freckles. He asked if he could give her the password. The girl was somewhere in her thoughts, so she didn't hear her classmate's question at first. And then she told him to give her the password. The girl began to enter it into her phone. The classmate stood silently and looked at Kang Hana. Suddenly, the guy asked what it was like outside and added that they had been here all along. Hannah was a little annoyed and asked why the guy was asking if the answer was already obvious. It was dangerous outside. The guy gave a short, "I see," and turned his head to the side. The classmate continued that it was safe here. He added that even though they were hiding, the view was incredible. He ended up saying that there were restaurants with a small supply of food. The guy said he would go see what they had left and bring the girl something. Hannah didn't even turn and look at the guy. He turned around and told her to call him if she needed anything. Hannah wondered to herself what was wrong with these losers and why they were so friendly to her. The girl looked at the group of girls. Suddenly, one of them noticed that Hannah was looking at her. Then her classmate decided to talk to the girl. She smiled sweetly at her and asked if she still had a charge on her phone. Hannah didn't understand why she needed it and asked what the girl wanted from her. The girl asked if Hannah could lend her phone for a minute because hers had been disconnected not long ago. But Hannah said she didn't think she could share her phone. She said that her phone was also about to run out of power, so she couldn't lend it to anyone. Hannah looked down and apologized to her classmate, to which she simply replied, "I see," and left. This was overheard by two other classmates who were eavesdropping on the girls' conversation. The girl with the big lips turned to Hannah. She called out to her classmate. She looked up and saw a picture. The lipped girl looked at Hannah and held out her hand to her, hinting that she had given her her phone. But Hannah pretended not to understand and asked what the matter was. The girl said they had to check her phone. She added that otherwise they could not trust her. Hannah was outraged by what she heard. She asked why they needed to do this, but her classmate told her that if Hannah didn't agree, she could always leave at any time. And she smiled, but it was not sincere. Hannah was weak, so she was very scared. A few seconds later, her classmates were already checking her phone. They were laughing at her and saying that she had been using such stupid chats since high school. Hannah suddenly shouted that they had seen everything, so they could give her the phone. But the girl with the big duck lips said she would take care of the rest of her charge on the phone. Hannah screamed that she wouldn't. A classmate reminded me that Hannah was supposed to come from So-yeon. She added that it was very strange. If So-yeon knew they were here, why hadn't she come yet? But Hannah didn't know what to say. She was even a little nervous. Suddenly, the lipped girl called out to Kiju, who was their classmate and the only guy here. The girl asked him to bring her a drink because her throat was dry. The guy left immediately. The girl sent him an airy kiss and thanked him. And when the guy left, the girl said that it was good to have friends like Kiju. Suddenly, she told Hannah that she was joking and wasn't going to do anything about her chats. And then she added that the girl had to do something for them as a thank you. She suggested that Hannah let the girl see her gallery. The lipped classmate added that she was sure there was a lot of bullshit in there. Hannah suddenly became even more worried. Her eyes widened and cold sweat dripped down her face. Hannah immediately started taking her phone away from the girl, but she wouldn't let her. She was having a lot of fun, making fun of the poor girl. She said she wouldn't steal it and opened a gallery at the same time. Suddenly, she saw something terrible. In Hannah's gallery, there was a photo of Lee Hong-mi's corpse. The lame duck opened her eyes wide. She clearly did not expect to see this on the girl's phone. She screamed and asked Hannah what she had done to poor Hong-mi. Hannah screamed back. Another classmate put her hand over her mouth. Hannah began to say that it was not true and that she did not kill Hong-mi. Suddenly, the nasty classmate heard a sound and turned toward him. The sound came from another room with a glass door. It was Kang Ji-hoon. He was knocking on the door of the restaurant and shouting for them to open it for him. Behind him were So-yeon and Jeon-woo. The guy kept knocking and saying that he knew they were there and demanded to open the door. Kang Ji-hoon did not calm down and shouted for them to open up. Jeon-woo, who was standing behind him, suddenly realized that he knew what he had to do. When Kang Ji-hoon came to his classmates and told them that Hannah had been cheating on them, the guy was holding a phone. Kang Ji-hoon said he knew it was wrong, but he took Hong-mi's phone with him. He said that there was a class group chat where everyone was there except them. He added that Park Min did it and called him a freak. Yeon-woo and So-yeon started reading the messages from that chat. They were very surprised by what was written there. Yeon-woo read that someone had written about him, and that if he came, he would definitely help them. Suddenly, that lipped girl came to the door. She told her classmates to leave because they didn't want any trouble. The girl gave them her middle finger and said she wasn't sure she could open the door and added that if they wanted to, they could try to open it from the inside. Kang Ji-hoon threatened that the girl had better open the door for them while the boy was in the mood, and then asked if she also knew about the second chat of their class, to which the lame duck replied that she didn't care about it at all right now. The girls who were standing nearby and hiding said that this was a very strong statement and praised their friend. Another classmate asked how Kang Ji-hoon had even heard about the group chat. Suddenly, the lipped classmate turned to Hannah. She yelled at her and said that she had given it away. Hannah panicked and said it wasn't true. Kiju approached them and offered to listen to Hannah first. He added that they still could not kick the girl out of here. And then he offered to let other classmates in. Suddenly, the lame duck started talking to the others through the door. She asked if they had left yet, and then told them to listen carefully. The girl said that she really wasn't sure she could open the door for them. Yeon-woo said they had nowhere to go. He suggested that they leave and find another shelter. He added that it was dangerous to be here now. Suddenly, Kang Ji-hoon indignantly asked Yeon-woo what he meant. The headman asked if the boy knew that they had come here in the hope of finding shelter. Kang Ji-hoon told the girls that if they didn't open the door for them in a nice way, he would just break it down. He added that they had to fight for their lives. Jeon-woo said he understood everything, but it was dangerous. Meanwhile, a soldier came running to them. He called his friends and they all came back to him. The soldier pointed his gun at the door and asked the teenagers what they were doing here. Then he asked if they had opened the door for them. Then the soldier threatened that he was counting to 3 so that the nasty rolling would open the door for them. The girl was afraid and opened her big mouth wide. The man pointed his assault rifle and ordered them to open the door immediately. Of course, these cowards who asserted themselves at the expense of others opened this door for them. The soldier began to scold them and called them freaks. The man asked them if they realized that they only survived because they stole food from here. The lame ducks just nodded their heads. The soldier started talking about how important it was for them to stay together now. He added that most of the monsters were here, and they had to be ready for it. The lipped classmate asked if the monsters were really there, and then pretended not to be afraid. The soldier realized that he was talking to a girl who was not very smart, so he explained that they could stay here for 100 days, but that sooner or later they would run out of food. He told them to just stick together and follow him. Suddenly, Kiju raised his hand and nervously asked if he could ask me something. He asked how they could get out without the monsters noticing them. Kiju continued that this was the safest place to be right now. He said it would be better if they just found a store like this one. Suddenly, the lame duck poked Kiju and told him to shut up. She shouted at him and said that he had it so easy. The soldier said that everything was decided then, and everyone had to get ready to leave. Meanwhile, Gubata almost beat Kija. Suddenly, two of my classmates turned to the soldier. They probably weren't ready to leave the room. The man said he had contacted the others. He added that this is why they had to return to the base. The man did not know what exactly was happening there, but citizens protested. The news showed citizens protesting. They said that the government had temporarily stopped evacuating people out of the country. At the border, there were a bunch of buses packed with people. The man said that all the survivors were now gathering at the base. He added that they had to go there before it was too late. The soldier said that they were no longer high school students or children. He said it was time for them to go home. The teenagers' faces changed dramatically at this news. They could not believe it. She said she was very happy that this moment had finally come.